Welcome to another episode of the Fortitude Forum. I'm your host, Bill Burke, and you know how we do it here. We always have an impactful guest, and today is definitely no different. We are circling back, Amberly and I, and having a second conversation. You didn't get to hear the first one. We had some technical difficulties, but Amberly was gracious enough to circle back around and take two. So here we are. She is an author and a speaker and a mindset coach, but aside from everything that she does professionally, and much more importantly, she is a survivor. So I am thrilled to welcome to the show Amberly Lago. Welcome in.
Thank you. I know sometimes we hit record and I'm like, oh, we were talking. Probably people want to know what we were talking about. It's always the good stuff.
Well, the stories that you told and your story just in general is so impactful that we had to make it work and get it out to everybody that listens, because you really have a chance to have an impact on a lot of people. And I think your story needs to be told continuously. I know you've told it so many times before on stages and on shows like this, but just so happy to have you back. And I'd love to just start with you telling your core story, because it is just truly amazing. I'll just lead from what the big issue is, which is 34 surgeries. That number is huge. Not going to steal your thunder and tell everybody exactly how you got to that point, but would love for you to just take us on that journey and tell us the adversity that you faced and exactly what happened, if you don't mind.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me on the show. And my intention is to really share some things that I've learned along the way, because I know that we all go through challenges. We all have pain, whether it's physical or emotional or whatever that may be. And pain has been my biggest teacher. And yes, 34 surgeries. And it's funny. I'm not funny, I guess. But at this point, sense of humor has really helped my husband and I get through a lot. And I have to have surgery tomorrow, but it's on my hand. And when I had gone in for the consultation, I said, can you just go ahead and do it right here in the office? And they're like, no, this is actually a procedure. This has to be cut out. We have to operate. And I was like, yeah, but can you just numb me? I don't want to be under anesthesia again. And they looked at me like I was crazy until they saw my leg. That they're like, oh, we get it now. But yeah, my life was just completely different. It's going to be this month actually is 16 years ago, and time just goes by so fast. And a lot of time after my accident happened, so much of it was a blur because I was in the hospital the first time for 3.5 months. And then, in and out for years, surgery after surgery. But I was in the fitness industry, and my whole life was before that, I was a professional dancer, and my whole life was active and fitness and doing fitness videos and sponsored by Nike and doing infomercials. And actually, a day before my accident, I just filmed another fitness video. And I was coming home from work on my Harley, just cruising down the boulevard. It was a beautiful California day, and everything changed in the blink of an eye. There was an SUV that shot out of a parking lot, and I really had no time other than to think, oh crap, this is really happening. Let off the clutch and try to jump off my bike. And it was too late. I got T-boned. I was thrown about 30 feet. And I just remember sliding across the asphalt thinking, just please don't let another car hit me, because I was on Ventura Boulevard and it's a pretty busy road in LA. And I finally came to a stop and looked down at my leg. And I only looked down once because it's just crazy to look down at your leg and just see it crumbled into pieces. There was blood everywhere. And I didn't know at the time but it was because my femoral artery was actually severed. And I was just screaming out some cuss words and then thinking, oh, my Methodist mama would not be proud of me. That thought actually went through my head. And then you being, and some of you listening, being an entrepreneurs, like, one of my first thoughts was, this can't be good. I might have to train clients on crutches for a while. I had no idea how this was going to completely change my life. I was rushed to the hospital, and on the way there, I kept looking at the paramedic thinking, squeezing his leg and just wanting him to make eye contact with me. And I remember he wouldn't look at me. And I had a thought of, is he not looking at me because he knows I'm going to die? I really didn't know. And when I got to the ER, it was chaotic and they had to put me in induced coma because I had lost so much blood that my vital organs were shutting down and they couldn't control the pain. And when I woke up out of a coma, a little over a week later, the first thing I learned was they said, "We are so sorry. This is like a war wound. There's nothing we can do for you. We need to amputate your leg, that you only have a 1% chance of saving it." And in that moment, all I focused on and all I thought about was, okay, so you're saying there's a chance. There's a chance. And they looked at me like I was crazy. And when I was in a coma, they were going to actually go ahead and amputate it. And because of my husband, and believe me, he still reminds me, "You have both of your legs because of me." He does all the time. I'm like, anytime, like I give him a hard time, he always reminds me of that. But he told the doctor, "No, do not amputate her leg. I want that to be her decision when she wakes up out of a coma." And I had no idea it was going to be the journey that it was. And I luckily I got transferred to a different hospital, and surgery after surgery, 34 in total the first time. They were able to piece by piece put my leg back together. Dr. Wiss is the one who saved my leg. And I really thought, okay, the worst is over, got out of the hospital. And I thought the pain wasn't getting better. It seemed to be getting worse, but I thought that was just part of it. And I remember I was upright on crutches and I was thinking this doctor that I was going to see for an assessment was going to be so proud because they told me that I would still be bedbound in a wheelchair. And here I was upright on crutches. I wasn't weight bearing or on the leg, and I could barely stand up for moments at a time because of the pain. But I go into the doctor's office and he looks at me and he goes, "Are you the kind of girl that likes to push through pain?" And I thought, like, yeah, he can tell. And he goes, "You need to stop. You need to stop right now. You've got something very serious." And I thought, yeah, I was hit by an SUV, but here I am. And he said, "Well, no, you've got a nerve disorder. It's a disease that's incurable. It's called complex regional pain syndrome. Your life is never going to be the same. You're going to be permanently disabled. You need to get back in your wheelchair." And I said, "Okay, for how long?" And he goes, "Forever." He goes, "You'll never walk again. You'll never work again. You'll probably have to wear orthopedic shoes." And in my mind, I was just, all I heard was orthopedic shoes. I am not wearing orthopedic shoes. It wasn't even hitting me. And I left there devastated, feeling like I'd been kicked in the gut. But I actually didn't go home and get in my wheelchair. Instead, I went to physical therapy. And when I walked in, my therapist goes, "Amberly, you don't have an appointment. What are you doing here?" And I said, "Terry, I know, but I just learned something and I am going to have to work harder than I've ever imagined if I want to have the life that I've always imagined." And boy, I didn't know how hard that was going to be. It has taken a lot of grit, and by the grace of God, I am walking again. I just got back from the gym. I'm working again. And what I've learned is it's not your circumstances that define you, it's what you do with what's left. It's your decision to be resilient. It's your decision to choose joy through the journey of life's ups and downs. And like I said, pain I've learned a lot from. And I learned it's not just about gritting it out all the time, that I had a lot of misconceptions about that. I mistook health scares for heroic acts and sacrifice for success and fear for function and stubbornness for strength and called that grit and thought it was good. But what I've learned is grit without connection is just resistance. For me, it was hitting rock bottom after my accident. And when I got home from the hospital, what I've learned is grit with connection to others, to your heart, to your higher power. That's where you truly find resilience.
Wow, what an amazing story. I can't even imagine. And I think I would have reacted similarly to you and just blocking out the important parts. And my brain probably went to the place where I was choosing to focus on things that were less important. But as a survival mechanism, I'm sure that's what we all do. We're just not in touch with how severe everything really is because we don't know what to do with that yet. But it sounds like you responded in such a great way, not just with the grit required, but also with these revelations about how you could get through this process and what you needed to learn maybe during that process. But I'm just going to go back real quick. I know the decision your husband made, but was there any hesitation on your part when you came out of the coma to make the decision to not amputate, knowing that there was such a small percentage of actually being able to keep that leg? What was that thinking process or decision process like for you?
No, actually, there was never a moment where there were moments in the hospital in between surgeries where, of course, I was scared. I remember one night late, I was awake and they had to come in the hospital and change my bandages every 3 hours because my leg was just completely exposed and open. You could see the inside of my leg. And this is weird, but there was a part of me that was like, grossed out, and there was a other part of me being in the fitness industry that I was looking inside my leg, and I'm like, "Wow, you can see the soleus and the gastrocnemius and the striations in the muscle." It was weird, I know. But they would come and change these bandages, and I would just lay awake there at night and just not sleep because of the pain, and I remember there was one night in particular where I was like I was spiraling down thinking, what if I don't make it through tomorrow's surgery? What if I can't walk again? What if they amputate my leg? What if I can't chase after my children? What if my husband doesn't love me? What if my husband leaves me? What if I don't live through tomorrow? And I was spiraling down. And in that moment, I thought, wait a minute, I have a choice here. I can focus on what I can do instead of what I can't, and what I do have instead of what I don't have. And I think for you to really get in a place where you can think that way, it's all about being grateful and being grateful for what you have. It's alchemy. And I realized just how much that shifted my mindset when I started writing down. I was writing down in a little notepad that somebody had brought me every single client that had come in to see me, every nurse that I had, every doctor, every gift that I received, people that brought me food and flowers. And I noticed when I wrote that down and I focused on that, it made me feel so filled with what I did have, that I was alive, that I had these people that cared for me, a good team of doctors and nurses and friends, family, and clients that I took care of for so long that were now taking care of me. And there were moments when I was scared that I wouldn't wake up or I was going to die, but never for a moment was there a time where I thought, I don't want to save my leg. It actually wasn't until a year after all these surgeries when I could not get out of pain and I was trying every kind of medical treatment after the diagnosis of CRPS. I was trying Eastern, Western medicine. I had a spinal block, spinal radio frequency. That's where they burn the nerve, and
Hmm.
the side effect of that is paralyzation. Thank God that didn't happen. 2 spinal stimulators where they implant metal leads into your spine and they implant a box in your butt cheek. I'm not even kidding. And it's supposed to block the pain that goes down. I was trying every kind of, I was a good candidate for any snake oil salesman out there that said we can get you out of pain. 73 homeopathic pills and 11 prescription medications every day, and nothing was working. And so I thought, I've got the solution. I'm just going to cut my leg off. I went to the doctor and I said, Dr. Wiss, I appreciate you doing all these surgeries, but I need to move on with my life. We need to go ahead and cut it off. And he said, we can't do that. And I said, what do you mean you can't do it? I said, cut it off. I can't deal with the pain. Just cut it off. And he said, you've got CRPS, and if we amputate, it may spread, it may get worse. And then he did something that changed my life. He put my leg in his lap, not on the table, but in his lap on his nice white coat. And he looked at it like it was a masterpiece. And in that moment, I thought, wow, if he can look at it that way, maybe I can look at it differently. And it took a little time, but little by little, I started to get radically honest and accept where I was, who I was, and look down at those scars as growth and with gratitude instead of disgust. And I started to little by little accept where I was. And I think that's the key to transformation is really taking the blinders off, accepting where you are, who you are, where you are on your journey. And that way you can take action steps with grit. You can be free. I think the truth, there's that saying, the truth will set you free. Yes, it might kick your butt a little bit, but it will set you free and it will allow you to improve your life in every way and connect with the people that you are meant to connect with.
Yeah, very well said. Wow, just such an amazing journey. And I know it's not over yet because, you continue to deal with pain and develop that grit and resilience. And I'm curious, your work center is now on helping other people figure out what their superpowers are. We've heard a little bit about what yours are, but how do you actually do that? How do you define resilience for people today? And then how do you help them transform essentially from where they are to where they want to be?
Thank you. I I don't know. I think maybe one of my superpowers is that I can see the gifts in people and acknowledge that and then help them cultivate everything they need to go share their superpower with the world. And I just think that we all have a story. Every one of us has important lessons that we've learned, most of us the hard way. And when we take those lessons that we learned, our gifts, our superpower, and we go share that with others, the world's a better place. And so I think that resilience is not bouncing back, it's choosing to have the courage to move forward with joy and happiness and get to do the things with the people that you love. And but it's a choice. I think that resilience is within all of us. It's up to us to tap into us to it, and it really decides, it starts with a decision. You got to decide that you are going to be the victor of your life and not the victim. And it's not that you're resilient and you're confident and that's it, everything's great. It's like we have to work on our resilience before we need it. And I think that's why it's super important to pause and really think about what are the things that light you up? What are the things that bring you joy? What are your non-negotiable? Because there was a while when things were going really well and I lost my career, had $2.9 million worth of medical expenses. We had a lien on our house. I was the main breadwinner. And to lose my career, it was a really one of the hardest things I've ever been through in every way. And to climb out of that one day at a time, to put the grit in, to tap into the resilience, and to be grateful that I was able to buy us a home in Texas. I remember sitting out when we got moved in, moving boxes all day and unpacking and sitting outside in the hammock with my daughter and looking around and just getting overwhelmed with gratitude, and my eyes were filled with tears just at how grateful I am to have the life that I have. But we get to create the life that we want. It's up to us, though. Nobody's going to do it for you. You got to decide you want it, and you got to get crystal clear on that vision and then take action steps every day. And one of the most important things is to not do it alone. If you can get anything out of our conversation today, don't do it alone. I tried that and it didn't work. So, whether it is on your entrepreneurial journey, whether it's you want to write a book, whether it's you want to start a business, or whether you want to speak on stage, or you're just going through a hard time and trying to get sober or healthy, don't do it alone. There are so many people that you could reach out to. There are strangers on Instagram that you could send a DM. I've got two people in my mastermind that just reached out to me because they heard me on a podcast. And there was something in me that was like, I need to talk to this person. And so you never know. Sometimes it's easier to even talk to a stranger than it is to talk to a family member or somebody that's really close. But you have to decide, and you have to be willing, and you have to be able to put in the grit. My grandfather has had a saying. My grandfather, rest his soul, the best man I ever knew. And he said, "You've got a shovel in your hand. You can lean on it and pray for a hole, or you can start digging." And I'm all about prayer, but you got to do the work. You got to start digging.
Yeah, that is so good. I'm going to remember that one. It's funny how those grandparents have such sage advice for us and we never forget it. So you mentioned the work that you do and you're in front of people, you just had a mastermind, you're speaking on stages. For somebody who is teetering on that edge of pushing through or throwing in the towel, what's one practical piece of advice that they can do or implement right now that maybe doesn't change their whole world instantly, but gives them a little bit of hope and maybe a little bit of momentum in terms of moving forward?
First of all, if you're at that point, congratulations, because I think, especially as an entrepreneur, if you aren't ready to throw in the towel at least once a week, then maybe you're not working hard enough. No, I
Yeah.
just, even before we started recording, you're like, "What have you been up to?" And I was like, "Oh, I just finished my annual event." And honestly, it was incredible. But I was like, but I'm glad it's done. It was hard, and there were moments where I was like, "What am I doing? Is this crazy?" I wanted to throw in the towel, but I didn't, and now I can look back and go, "It was so worth it," especially that I'm seeing so many people post about it and share the breakthrough that they had, and sharing pictures of people that they met and collaborations that they're doing. That just really fills my heart. But if you are in a place where you're like, "Man, this is hard," congratulations, you're about to hit your breakthrough. I feel like there's the most resistance right before there's a breakthrough. But what I would suggest is, for me, I need to take contrary action. So that means I used to try to do it all alone. I would just grit it out, try to do it all alone, and it didn't work. When you can share your pain, it's divided. When you share your joy, it's multiplied. So reach out to somebody, but honestly, reach out to somebody who has done the thing that you want to do. As my husband says, he tells me, he's like, and he's a former cop, and he's got a really good BS detector. And he's, "Oh my gosh, Amberly, your industry has so much BS." And I'm like, "Yeah, he's really good about that." And so I think it's important to not just look at a highlight reel on somebody's social media, but talk to the people that they have worked with and ask them, "How were your results? What good did you get out of the coaching or the program or going to that event or being in their mastermind?" I think that's really important. But I would say don't do it alone. And then just one other thing is, really get a crystal clear vision of where you want to go. And then every single day, even if it's a baby step, take at least one action step to get closer to where you want to go. It might not seem like a lot, but it's a step in the right direction. I'm old school. I have notebooks over here and clipboards, and I've got sticky notes on my desk of the things that are a must do that I have absolutely need to complete today. And then I also, like when I started my podcast, I made a list, and I made a list of every speaker that was a dream podcast guest for my show. And little by little, I got every single person that was on that list. I need to have you on, Bill, that was on that list, except for Oprah. She's the only one that wasn't on the list. And I've had, so if you can visualize it, if you can write it out, if you can speak it into the universe and then take action every day, it's going to happen.
So good. And we will end right there. Actually, I do have one more question for you, but man, so inspiring, not just your story, but your advice. Very deep and well thought out and so insightful and practical, which I think is so crucial for the listeners. But just as we wrap up here, and thank you again for taking the time, but what's next for you? What are you excited about building? What inspires you to go to the next level? What's on the frontier for Amberly?
Well, I think the thing that I'm most excited about is doing a retreat, and we usually for my mastermind, and we usually do it at my home. And this year we're actually doing it in Jacksonville, Florida, right on the beach, and we're all staying. We have it at my home, but we stay in hotels. This time we're staying in a home, and we're going to open up a few spots as it gets closer for anyone, just a couple of spots for people that want to join us. I'm most excited about that. I'm traveling a lot for events, for speaking events. I'll get to be in California and Minnesota and Pennsylvania and more in Dallas. There's a lot of events here in Dallas. And if you're ever in Dallas, you got to let me know. But I'm
I will
most
do that.
excited about that. Yeah. Because I lived in LA for 31 years and I've been here for about 3.5, almost 4 years. And I thought it might get slower when I moved here, but it actually picked up. There is a lot of opportunity here in Dallas. I guess because it's so central, it's a great place for events. But I think that's what I'm most excited about. That and continuing. My podcast has moved in studio now in Dallas. So that's when you'll really have to let me know when you're here. So we'll get you on the podcast in studio.
That'd be amazing. That would be amazing. I am so looking forward to that. I love Dallas. I've been there a couple times, but it's not one of those cities where I've seen it and been there and I'm done with it. I'd love to go back sometime. So that'd be amazing. But thank you, Amberly, for joining us. This has been such an inspiring show, and your story just continues to
Mm,
lift people up. So thank you so much for being here, and continued success, not just with your health, but of course with all you're doing to impact others as well. Thanks so much.
thank you.